Okay, so change of pace. We're on to the U.S. edition of Married at First Sight. Today we are moving in. The honeymoon is over, and they're starting at day 7. And the pastor lets us know right up front that they are living in this apartment complex now this season. So they have to live together and actually see how they'll mesh in their real world together. Armani and Woody, she wanted something so that she could be comfy with and have that fun feeling, nervous about a real life. We all want someone to be there with us, is basically what she feels, and wants it to continue. But she's scared of the what ifs. And what if it's not like this? The pastor stops by to dig deep on issues, to help face future. Right now they talk about what drove him crazy looks, but she is brutally honest. And Armani says she appreciates Woody. The kid topic comes up. Good feelings can gloss over deep issues. You have to talk about boundaries, things you have done to set or will do that set you off. Woody doesn't want her hair cut, and they might not stay together if she does. Now, Armani isn't cool with him dictating and says that it shouldn't be all about her physical looks as a problem. We get into that deeper as we go along. At that moment, I agreed with Armani, but when we dig deeper, like the preacher has taught in this episode, it's about communication and every couple having to dig deep to see what makes them tick, so to speak. Moving on to Amelia and Bennett. They are just picture perfect. That's all I have to say. They are checking out the countertop to this new place, and Bennett just can't stop giggling. He calls the situation demented, and he feels like the rabbit hole with a sequence of weird events. They get a big closet, which has great acoustics. They both kind of sing in there. It was cute. The next morning, they slept well. They get up to move the belongings to the new place. Bennett calls Amelia's house big and more stable life than Bennett's, and Amelia makes jewelry to take to the market. Bennett finds Amelia's old yearbook, and they talk about high school, and Amelia was a homecoming queen, and Bennett just hopes he doesn't mess it up, which was adorable. Karen and Miles. Checking out the apartment, Karen admits that the 4 years age difference is bothering her. Karen wants to focus on him and building a connection. Karen is at Miles' place, and Miles has a ton of shoes, more than shoes than Karen, and Karen seems overwhelmed at his untidiness and shoes. Karen's place, however, says she feels weird having a man in her apartment when he comes to help her load up to go to their new place. Miles keeps picking things up and looking around. Miles says that after Karen gave him a hard time about all his stuff, especially shoes, he thinks Karen has more shoes than he does, which was adorable. Christina and Henry. Chris says he still has not made a move, that he's being respectful, but she wants a hubby to be a hubby. Henry is living together like a strange feeling and says it's a test for both of them. Christina visits Henry's studio apartment. Chris notes how small and tiny his place is, that there's no stove but a microwave. Now moving into discussing things that they should take to the new place, and he finds this like little bird thing with a hat on it. And first she's like, nah, and he's like, oh yeah. Chris then has her belongings in the SUV, not the central business district that she first mentioned the day that they got married. So most of her stuff is still in storage. Makes you think, doesn't it? It says to be continued. Go on, Donna. Okay, I will. Now, my favorite couple. You all know that I love Olivia and Brett. I think they are just the it couple. But they had their own problems tonight as well. Let's cover it. Olivia looks forward to sharing her life and realizes that she is set in her ways, but she would like to move into her house eventually with Brett. And Olivia is organized and has a sterile feeling kind of environment Brett feels about her house. It's close to work, Brett says, but it's not for, or she says it's close to work for her house so it's convenient for her. But Brett says, well, it's not for me. So then they visit to where they visit the where to live conversation in the future. Brett tables it. He's like, let's put it off. We'll take that conversation up down the road. Now we go to Brett's house. Brett owns his own house where Olivia rents her house, and Olivia wants to move in eventually. He wants Olivia to move in eventually to his house. Olivia calls his house messy and not decorated, and sees a house, not a home, but a bachelor pad at his house. Brett says Olivia doesn't like his house, and she seems to be like a kid on a field school trip. Not impressed. He can notice that right off the bat. Back to Amelia and Bennett. We're now at Bennett's house, showing off his little sanctuary, where there's no bathroom. He has to go to another place to go to the bathroom. He built it, though, and Amelia's impressed, loves the little home. That Bennett appreciates that she does show the affection towards the home. Amelia says it's spacey and cool and efficient, creative, unique, and he's quite talented. Bennett calls it meant to be. Of course. Then we start with the preacher. The preacher starts checking on all the couples again. Preacher talks about the hair decision, and Armani is asked about her thoughts. Woody talks about why he felt left out when a past relationship, a girl who had an abortion didn't consult him. Woody said, we didn't talk about things first. The preacher says, welcome to marriage. This is where communication, you work through your issues. I like that line. Okay. Christina, you sure judged Henry's place, not allowing him access to... Not cool, Christina. You want to rearrange furniture and complain about Henry's pace, and yes, him not making a move for the umpteenth millionth time. They discuss about moving in together, and Henry talks about having a party or parties while Christina is away working as a flight attendant. I'm telling you, this couple is just not going to work. Back to the preacher. We're going to sit down now with Olivia and Brett. And I like this conversation for a lot of reasons, and I'm going to take it bit by bit, and you'll see me stop and interject my thoughts and feelings because this couple has it. Marriage hasn't changed. It will be hard, Olivia says. Brett says, I have a real, capable wife. They discuss wedding attraction is there. Preacher wants to discuss kids and finances. She wants to travel and do things. And this is a problem moment because we can see Olivia really wanted a travel buddy, not a husband. That's how I'm taking it. And I feel like she's like, okay, you know what? If he can fit the bill and pay his own way and I don't have to be anything other than the side companion, I'm good. No. It's 50-50. And, maybe not go exotic places, but maybe like take day trips. To me, marriage is also about compromise. And I think that they're missing the big picture there with this conversation. Yes, communication is important, but compromise as well, too. Both of you can't have your way 110% all the time. And you might even say, oh, yes, I can. But no, you can't and have a working relationship. Both of you have to have a voice, but yet both of you have to be heard or listened to. And I think that's something that they should have mentioned tonight. The preacher wants to discuss the travel back to the problem. He can't afford it, and she would have to pay his way. She doesn't want to live in a daily routine atmosphere. It's a slight argument about the budget seems to happen right now. The preacher interjects and says, we are not here to compare finances because Olivia obviously makes more than Brett, but we're not going to compare finances. And then they start throwing around who pays their bills, and he feels like going on these big trips is just simply throwing money away. The preacher says, we are not going to resolve this, or we are not comparing this. There's a lot of tension and heat in the room. How can we resolve this? Because it must be resolved. And she doesn't want to share her emotions and want to get to a point where she's fully going in. And she starts crying. And this moment, when she starts crying and she's really telling him point blank, look, I'm scared to let you in all the way because if I do, then you're going to leave. That's what I'm taking away from those emotions. I hope I'm not wrong, Olivia, but that's what I was taking away. This part spoke volumes about Brett's character. He gets up. I literally think he's going to leave the room, maybe even leave the apartment. He gets up to get a box of tissues and bring her back the box of tissues and look intently at her while she takes the tissues. To me, that was a real man. Brett, you just manned up, cowboyed up. Anyway, Olivia wants to navigate to find their balance in their finances aren't the number one reason for divorce. Communication about finances is what the preacher says. I think he also could have said communication as well as compromise, because to me those two are what would equal balance this out. She can still take her trips, just maybe not as elaborate as what she wanted. You know, to me, yeah, you make more money than he does, but you know what? So what? Life isn't built around money. Life is built around love. And I know some of you are going to say, well, you can't live on love. But here's the thing. If you make your life about money, can you take it with you to heaven when you die? No. Is it going to buy you true happiness? I mean, are you going to feel really happy, Olivia, in another country alone by yourself without Brett there, who brings you joy and brings you happiness and you just radiate in his companionship? No. Honestly, it is about compromise. So maybe go to Six Flags for the day. Sure, it may not be an extravagant trip, but you're going somewhere. You're getting out of the house. You know, I really don't understand that argument. Armani sees how Woody lives with his grandma. That's how he lived before they got married. And his grandma had made dinner before they got there so that they could take it with them. And Woody has packed some shoes and this is another shoe issue. It's amazing how that was a big issue tonight. Armani doesn't like Woody's hat wall. He has a hat wall up there. And Armani's apartment, Woody is excited to see her place, and Armani's closet is located in a wall inside the bathroom. She picks out her clothes and then puts it on his arm, and he's like, good thing I work out, which was adorable. Then we have the pastor visiting Chris and Henry. He should have just spent the whole show with them, because by golly, we might have gotten somewhere. Anyway, Chris is upset being in the friend zone with Henry. Henry calls the situation crazy unorthodox. Pastor asks, what are your feelings about the relationship? Chris says he's got good qualities and he isn't being aggressive enough. Here he is about, she is about him not making the first move, Got to get with it, Chris. Or Henry, sorry. I keep getting these two mixed up because I keep shortening down Chris's name. Henry says, taking it slow. Still new here, no kissing or intimacy. Preacher asks about the relationship, past relationship that moved fast. How did that happen? Henry says, well, chemistry. I mean, I find Chris attractive and feelings need time to grow, and he calls the relationship a friendship. And he says he's getting a vibe from Chris that's impatience and high maintenance. The preacher says you need to be with someone who can bring out things in you. Chris has fire and sass and even diva that can compliment you. You have to give, and you need to talk about finances, kids, talk about this. The bare minimum effort is what they are both putting forward, and they're not being vulnerable or diving deep on issues. It's vital for communication to happen. Those two, I don't think they have any communication to happen, Preach. I'm just saying. Okay, so then the preacher sits down with Amelia and Bennett. They discuss the wedding, the honeymoon, and there's high praise from Amelia about friends and family getting along good, and Benjamin, or Bennett, why do I want to always call him Benjamin instead of Bennett? Anyway, Ben brings up meeting two times before being married at first sight, the reality of marriage, and they are attracted to each other, talk of moving forward. Kids, yes, adoption is okay. No real traditional role here, the preacher says, which is awesome. moving because Amelia gets residency might cause a problem. The preacher says you will have to disagreements and problems. This happy season won't last. Bennett's life is established and will wait to cross that bridge when they get there. Bennett says it will be a question of where his priorities are when the time comes. Now, if I was Amelia, when I heard Bennett speak of where his priorities are when the time comes, I would be like, wait, we're a couple. And I would be like causing the show probably to help, stop production right there and be like, we're a couple. Compromise, and then we'll realize together. It's, as I get older, one thing I have learned, even with my hot-headed temper, you have to compromise. You will not always get your way. You will not always be like, well, I can do this and it not affect the other person. You're in a relationship, so what affects you affects that other person too. Karen and Miles' apartment, the preacher visit. Pastor sees great potential without rock solid productivity. It may not last. The preacher asks, do you feel married? Karen says no. It's like the Twilight Zone. Miles is attracted to Karen. Feels like home. Feels like a safe place. Karen says, I think he's very handsome. Compliments are hard to come by, says Miles. Karen says, hard to get out of that frame of mind that we're strangers. Intimacy. Miles says that there will be a hug or a kiss on the cheek, and she says that PDA just feels weird, trying to get used to it, but still new to it because trust is a problem, and behavior, is it really him, or can she just trust him for a lifetime? What are you afraid of? The preacher asked Karen. Karen admits that she doesn't want to be hurt, doesn't know how it will work, the relationship. Preacher says, tell her, Miles. She's asking you to tell her. Miles says, I'm trusting this experience, I'm trusting God, and I'm not going anywhere. I love that response. Karen says, it sounds nice. And the preacher's like, why the doubt? She says she's heard all these things sound nice before and wonders if this will be true this time. The preacher talks about having what it takes to make it work. Miles says he's always going to be patient and look after Karen and put his needs on the back burner for her. Karen wants to tell... Okay. Karen's like, okay, you got to tell me what you're going to put on the back burner, and so we can see if we're compatible. The preacher asks Miles, what are your needs? And of course, he has the basic male needs for sex and so on and so forth. But communication, bottom line, is what the preacher keeps nailing home this episode. Happy house, happy spouse. And you got to let her know what Miles needs. That's why he tells her. And him both. There's a lot of things I would probably have worked on this episode if I was the producer. Compromise is a big thing. I can see where a lot of these couples, not just Olivia and Brett, it's practically across the board, because they're all having to decide what to take with them into this new establishment that they're moving into, and, we got to see a little bit of between Chris and Henry with that bird about, okay, you can take this, but you can't take that. And we got to see the shoes issue a lot with Karen and Miles and even Armani and Woody. Amelia and Bennett, they talked a little bit about some of the artwork that Bennett had. Not so much about about what Amelia was going to bring. I mean, Amelia was just sitting on the floor going through things, And as for Olivia and Brett, we didn't get to see the cats. I mean, she has 2 cats, he has 1 cat. Now, we saw the 1 cat when the preacher talked to them, yes, and that was Brett's. But where's Olivia's? I don't know. Now to go through who do I think will make it and who will I think will not make it. Has anything changed since the last episode? Let's do that. Okay, starting back. Armani and Woody, I'm still going to give you guys a firm 10 out of 10 stars. Amelia and Bennett, you are a 10 out of 10. Karen and Miles, I'm going to move you guys to a 7. Because Karen kind of let her guard down in front of the preacher. Miles seems very confident that he's there to make it work. So that gave me some hope. So we'll see where that goes. Christina and Henry, you are at a 2 still. Olivia and Brett, I am moving you guys to an 8. Don't let me down. Let's see, I think that's all of our couples. So we'll just see next week, on next week's episode, how we do, where we go. Of course, don't forget, tomorrow night is the Australian episode. I'm anxious because my 2 favorite couples on there that I want to see, if they're going to make it or break it, it's time to see tomorrow night. Of course, that is Steve and Michelle, which I have a feeling is not going to make it. And the other couple, and I wish I had my notes or saved my notes from last week, that I thought was going to make it. Oh, Johnny and Connie. We're going to see if my 2 favorite couples make it or break it tomorrow night. Since both of them going into this have said not going to make it, I have a bad feeling about that. I hope I'm wrong, but I have a bad feeling. So, thank you for tuning in. God bless. And see you again soon on the next review of Married at First Sight.